Oh, how you doing? Good? All right, I'm just showing you hard work today. I'm not going to show you guys a bunch of cool drawings or draw really cool shit for you guys to be excited about. I'm going to talk about the grunt work that makes pretty much every design better, lessens the workload that you have to do to get to your final result, and hopefully makes your design stronger in the process. But this isn't fun, this is hard work, okay? All right? All right. Reference is super important. I don't know how many of you are actively using your reference for pretty much every image you do, but I go through a fairly exhaustive research phase for almost every concept I do. There's a part of experience or the amount of time you spent doing this where you've built up a mental research library where you've seen things so many times you can sort of recall them. And you don't actually have to look up reference for it, but for the most part, I'm always trying to find something new or find something deeper about the material I already know to improve the quality of my design work. What we're looking for is like opportunity, right? Until you dig deeply into your reference material, you'll never really fully know what opportunities are there for you to improve your designs. Okay, let's do this. I'm sorry, I'm going to be reading from my iPad a little bit here. All right. While concept art is continually improving, execution-wise, it seems that creative innovation, it gets frequently forgotten. It gets left behind. I've seen so many students coming out of school that have just the most amazing compositional, painting, rendering skills, but don't have anything to say. Their concept is often, well, this is my version of this other concept, or they let their design end at Super Soldier or Space Marine, right? And that's the end of it. Or this is Fantasy Knight. But you look at this thing and it's like, well, I've seen 300 of these. This is a beautiful picture, but why should I choose yours over somebody else's? This is an arms race, right? Like everybody's so focused on execution and trying to outdo each other in quality that not a lot of people are paying attention to their design work. And I think as concept artists, design is where we really sort of shine. We're being paid for our ideas, not just for the quality of the images we can show a producer. Design's a form of communication. I'm just going to read this off the screen here because it should inspire people to be creative and ask questions. A good design has subtlety that keeps a viewer exploring. Okay, and this is creative. I apologize. Creative use of real-world reference can lead to more original designs. And add visual storytelling to your characters, your environments, your vehicles, your weapons even, right? Whatever happens to be, your visual effects. I've seen a lot of artists that are, again, just focus on polish. When you look at their monitor while they're doing a concept, they are only looking at other artists. If I walk past an artist that I'm working with, especially somebody that I've hired, and I see their second monitor where their reference should be is all ArtStation or DeviantArt or whatever it happens to be, I sort of tell them to close it down. I tell them to bring up real-world photographic reference. It's A-okay to be completely inspired by other artists, but when you're designing and you're constantly looking at somebody else's design, you're not offering anything new to the conversation. You're just altering it enough for it to be yours. But it's not ever really yours, is it? You're not really saying anything important with that. I usually spend a fair amount of time researching, up to a day, researching references before I jump into anything, especially for a work project. It's exhaustive. It's not usually incredibly fun, but I think it's very necessary. It saves me time in the long run, even though I'm spending all this time up front not drawing. But at the end of the cycle, at the end of whatever I've created, I've made less throwaway work. I've created fewer images that just get passed over, and I've wasted a lot less time. So let's go to the next one. Hey. All right, so I'm just going to go through a couple of sort of standard reference usage methods, and I'm sorry if this is all like, yeah, we know this already, but I think it's important to go over these basic functions. So the first one I'm starting with is the most obvious. There's literal use of reference. If you've played a real-world game, Modern Warfare, Grand Theft Auto, For the most part, they just take something that exists, they put it in the game, and they change it just enough not to get into legal trouble from the owner of whatever they're copying. It does its job, and it's necessary for contemporary material, but it's not particularly creative, is it? You're just sort of an assembly line worker at that point. And then there's structural and functional studies, which is just trying to understand how something works, right? I think this is the most important part of concept reference. If you don't know how something works, you're going to have a really hard time convincing the viewer that the thing you're drawing actually works. What you're creating doesn't have to be real. If it was made in real life, it doesn't have to be functional. It doesn't have to work. But it should look like, to the viewer, it should look like this could work. They should be able to stretch their imagination enough to accept this. Here we go. Here's some more. This is getting a little bit more abstract. So we have translation. Sorry. That's just reinterpreting features of your reference into your design. So if you're taking shocks and struts from a car or something like that and sort of putting them where they don't belong, or you're just taking parts of your design and turning them into a surface material, or taking surface materials from something else and putting it on your reference. There's visual parity, which is essentially an extension of silhouette usage or shape language, right? So if you're going to make a ninja character, you probably want them to look like a ninja, so you'll do the baggy pants or whatever. Maybe there'll be some mesh on there. So the silhouette will fit. It'll be relatable to everybody. We all have a frame of reference for it. But you're filling in the detail on your own and creating something new out of it. And then we have materials, and that's just, you know, figuring out how materials work under lighting conditions, right? If you've got bad example, if you've got Elastic Man or Rubber Band Guy and he has stretchy arms and stuff, and then you coat him with a stone texture, it's going to be ridiculous. Nobody's going to look at that and say, oh, this could totally work. I love this idea. It's not going to happen. People will be confused. Then we get into abstraction. This is things like creating shape language out of your reference. You're not using your reference directly. It probably has nothing to do with your reference material. Right here, my friend, I'm bad at this. Right here, my friend Luke Berliner, he was doing a class in Los Angeles and redesigning sets from Avatar. These are not for the movie. This is just a student project. He's the lead concept artist at Sony Santa Monica. And so he was looking for ways to make the Earth faction from that movie, the bad guys, feel a little bit more militaristic, more militant, more aggressive. And so he decided to go through all of his concepts and use shape language from firearms, from rifles, pistols. His interiors all had very gun-like shapes, and you don't notice it as a gun at first. It doesn't scream, oh, he just put a gun in there and called it a computer. Like right here, he's used this transparent magazine as the whole frame for a building, right? It's cool, it's novel, it's different from what I've seen, but it definitely relates back to his source material. Okay, and then we have emotional. This one's weird, and it borders on bullshit. This is when you're listening to music and you like a song so much, or it hits you so much that you just have to get behind your computer and draw something while this music is playing. Or you've read a passage from something that just gets your brain going and you have to create, right? This is not a way I would ever recommend to base your workflow. All of these functions, like all of these ways to use reference, need to be used together. Otherwise, you'll just sort of fall flat and you'll create uncompelling work. These here were just inspired by, like the one on the right there is just from listening to a particular band over and over and over again for like a week. And then the one on the left there is, I was reading mythology and stuff, and I learned about Baba Yaga, and I just thought, how cool would it be to do a sci-fi approach to that? That's basically her cauldron, you know? Super fun, not necessarily a reliable method, but sometimes a mood will hit you based on something non-visual, and that gets you moving. I'm pointing at that for some reason. I'm really not good at this, can you tell? All right, so I'm just going to go through a couple of examples of how I would go through and break down reference material. Right here we have a 1978 Dodge Charger RT. It's a fantastic car. I love muscle cars. Anytime I do a spaceship, the design language is always based around mid-70s, late 60s muscle cars. So I've gone through a few ways to do this here. This is, by the way, the work part of it. This can be fun But this is where you want to focus and never take something for granted. You don't want to take this at face value. You can't just open this car and say, well, this is the only reference I need to create my suit of power armor, or my knight with a robot car horse. I don't know. So, of course, there's the literal pick. You can just take it, put it in the game, change it just enough not to get sued. There's translation, where you're grabbing shape language from this and trying to reinterpret it onto a different design. There's abstraction, which is literally just taking features that make this thing cool. It's things that jump out at you, and using the same aesthetic but redesigning it to fit your purpose. I don't know, like The Fifth Element. You guys have probably seen that movie, right? Is that too old? Right? They have inspiration from like 1930s and 40s automobiles for all of their flying cars and everything. And then there's emotional, which is, again, that's the sort of bullshit one that strikes everybody differently and is very hard to evaluate and to explain to someone properly. But you guys probably all know when you see something and you don't know what it is about it, but it makes you have to draw. All right. But then we can take this further. So we go deeper into this research, right? This is one layer. I can probably get some good designs out of this. I could probably find some cool things about it. I don't fully know how the car works, why, or how it was built, but I've got a little foundation. But you can go a little deeper by asking a few questions. Who, what, when, why, how. All of these are super valuable ways to dig into this. If you're looking at this and you want to figure out how it works, why it is the way it is, who made it, when it was made, it's pretty easy just to use Google and start searching these things, right? And then you can dig deeper into your reference material. What makes this car so awesome? It is that badass V8 engine with more horsepower than literally any driver knows what to do with. And then I've dug into this and I found a wrecked one, which I thought was fantastic. My question there is, who destroyed this? Why is this car made? You know, essentially so people can spin their tires and go really fucking fast. Where was the car made? It's Detroit. And how was this car made? Which is going to bring you to an entirely different set of references. And then you can keep going from there with every new reference you pull out by asking these same questions. And I'm done with notes there. So I found exploded drawings of this engine where you have all the technical details pulled out. I found expanded versions of it with the blower customizations, right? There's ways to take all of this further. The destroyed car, I found a bunch of people actually restoring one of these cars. And so they're going in and they're welding the body out, they're finding new body panels, they're just doing all this cool work. And then why was this car made? For racing. Steve McQueen is racing it, he's doing it for trophies. These things end up relating. The car accident, I found an accident with this particular car. Again, maybe it's not valuable, and maybe I stopped this level of research there. Maybe I've dug too deep in that direction so I can push in other ways. So the manufacturing, I can look at what were these plants like in the 1960s? What happened to the workers of these plants? Spoiler, they all went on strike and they were attacked by police. And then other parts of the car. I've pulled out the interior and sort of tried to figure out what the interior made of and how is that made. So we go another level deeper. And we can keep asking these questions. You don't have to go this far. Maybe this is too far. You could keep going until you get to the atomic symbol for iron, right? You can just keep going probably infinitely until you get to the Big Bang. But if you're not getting something that is speaking to you emotionally, that looks good for a design aesthetic, that brings your concept beyond, well, I have my muscle car spaceship and they have theirs, why is mine better or worse? Then you need to keep going. And sometimes, as I'll show you this afternoon, because I'm doing another demo, this reference takes you to super weird places that are completely unrelated. But right here, I mean, we've got the race versions of the car, we have them on strike, we have the auto industry collapse, which is what happened after these strikes when the workers weren't getting paid, people in jail. It's all kind of fun. Over here, we've got, on the left-hand side, the second image down is machine shops for how they made these parts. These machines that they use are really impressive on their own. And if I'd not looked at how they made these things, I wouldn't have found that cool shape language from these old, heavy, iron industrial machines that are actually quite a lot of fun to explore. You should look up machine shop stuff from the 60s and 70s. It's absolutely fantastic. Or parts fabrication from the 60s and 70s. If I had stopped at the car, I never would have figured this stuff out. I never would have seen it. And then, let's see what's next. And then at this point, how much time do we have left? Okay, that's a lot of time. At this point, I just have some tips, and we'll just keep going. You'd never want to take your reference material at face value. Every piece of reference you can find is a lot deeper than just the first image you found, right? Maybe you're going to get front, side views, stuff like that, but you still only have the aesthetic principles of this design. You don't understand how it works. You don't understand why it was designed, or maybe what the designers were thinking when they were trying to make the visual appearance of it. The motivation of another designer is just as valuable as a full library of reference materials, because then you know what they're looking at, you know how they're thinking about this work and what their approach is. I would say don't stop at cool shapes too. I see a lot of stuff lately that has some super cool shapes, but there's no story, there's no personality, there isn't a lot of individuality to it. And I know I sound cynical, and it is not to say that these artists are bad artists. They're usually pretty fantastic. But I'm always pushing for something more. I always want to see something more. I want to explore things that I haven't explored before. And if I see the front page of ArtStation is covered by 30 Chinese MMO anime girls, and then there's about 40 spaceships, there's 300 Space Marine guys, why would I look at somebody's Space Marine guy when I've got a thumbnail of 500 of them that are all basically the same? They're all cool, they're all well drawn. But what makes me as a viewer, or as honestly as the case was with my last job, what makes me as somebody who wants to hire artists? What makes me look at it? What makes me interested, right? If I'm going to hire an artist for a project where we're creating a new world, where we're doing IP development, do we know IP development, right? I don't think I want to hire somebody that can churn out 50 designs for a Halo helmet for the multiplayer. That's not the guy I'm going to look for building a world. Or not usually, maybe the guy can do both, right? But if I see your portfolio is 300 awesome sci-fi helmets, and I need you to make a character, not a unit, not a soldier, not a NPC, an actual character, despite the fact that your work is amazing, I am going to pass on to the next portfolio. Maybe somebody who does not paint as well, but somebody whose design work stands out, somebody who has something original to say and can take the reference material and the story material I give them and actually turn it into something new. You're going to find that most art directors, I don't know where you guys are in your career. I'm assuming some of you are vets, some of you are beginners. You won't generally find art directors who know what they want. And I know that sounds awful, but it's true. A lot of art directors react as opposed to direct, or they will give you a very, very basic direction and expect you to fill in the blanks. And most likely you'll be talking to your lead, who is also struggling to get more information and fill in those blanks. So it's important to have a voice. It's pretty important to be able to dig deeper than just what everybody else is doing. The idea of a reference image you found may be more useful than the actual reference usage you found. It's like that car. I could do a couple of things with that car. I could probably make a robot out of it. I could probably make a spaceship out of it. Maybe I could make some cool like fantasy armor out of it in some ways, although I think it would probably look too modern. But there's probably something else there that's more valuable. It's fairly easy to get excited about something you like, something you're used to, something you are familiar with, and just going straight for it and using the same thing for 20 different concepts because it worked before, it'll work again. You kind of have to branch out and start looking at things that maybe you're not interested in. Maybe things you don't particularly like are actually hiding some detail that would be valuable to you as an artist. I'm not a big fan of modern anime and like the schoolgirl Lolita dress, nosebleed, 16-year-old kid with glasses doing this, because he has powers. So when you have powers, that's how you activate them. But there's still a lot of cool stuff there. I'm not a huge fan of it, but if every once in a while, like at the base level, posing. Like nobody does posing better than like anime artists. Like they just make the most awesome dynamic poses. I don't care for the fact that it's a 16-year-old boy with white hair and glasses. I, as a 42-year-old man, cannot relate to that, but there's value there, right? Or sometimes it's even in costume, that if it isn't a schoolgirl or schoolboy, the costumes can actually be pretty interesting. Cuts and folds in fabric. Through this sort of work, I actually, because if you don't know me, I do 90% character work. So this work has actually led me to like the fashion world, where I've actually had some influence there. I've actually gone and met fashion designers. I've done travel for this, just to figure out how they make these clothes, what their inspiration is for this stuff. And sometimes it's other fashion designers, and sometimes it is just crazy. Like a fashion designer's inspiration, it doesn't have to be anything even remotely related to fashion, and I don't think ours should have to be either, right? We shouldn't have to sit here and reference other art. We should be referencing the real world and stuff that is possible, and then digging as deep into that as you conceivably can. And then another thing for making good characters with your reference is try to choose reference that tells you something about that character. For instance, how many glowing hexagon repeating force fields have you seen? Like over the last 10 years, how many times have you seen a field of 1,000 hexagons glowing blue? It's sort of the standard sci-fi shape now. And I think it's only the standard sci-fi shape because nobody said, maybe we can do something better. Right? Deus Ex was cool, like they had triangles, they had their shape, right? It doesn't seem like much, but it differentiates them, right? It says something different. The triangle is actually the most strong shape, right? They use that as like a shield thing. It's pretty cool. Maybe you could take other repeating shapes to tell something about your characters. If your character is a paladin type defender and he has a glowing force field, what if you made them shaped like shields? If you want the repeating shape, your art director's like, we need a repeating shape, we gotta have it. Choose something that says anything about the character, right? We also see like the hexagon design used everywhere on costuming. It's just everywhere. We all saw Mass Effect and Metal Gear and we all lost our goddamn minds. And we just started putting hexagons everywhere. It's appealing. It's a very cool repeating shape. But I think we can do better by digging into your reference and going beyond just the shapes that you know work already. I don't know. Like I said, shields are a cool one. You could do like houndstooth. There's millions of things out there. You can create your own. It's fairly simple, right? If you have a bunch of Navy SEAL type guys on Neptune, they're on the ice planet or something like that, and you need a cool traction pattern for their knee pads, then maybe you could use wavy shapes or something that has a water-like feeling involved, right? If you have a bunch of death soldiers, instead of putting just a big skull on the faceplate of their helmets, which everybody does, it looks cool, right? Super tough, because you got a big skull right here. What if you took the tactical straps, the webbing vest, and you pulled that into ribcage designs, right? And wrapped it around the body to make them feel skeletal from head to toe, instead of just the death mask. There's so many options out there beyond what we've gotten used to, and I think they deserve to be explored. I'm sort of out of material.
So, yeah.
I went a little fast.
Okay. So, yeah, guys. Сейчас давайте, во-первых, поблагодарим Тревора за замечательное выступление. И сейчас у нас есть достаточно много времени для того, чтобы позадавать вопросы, для того, чтобы, в принципе, узнать все то, что вас интересует дополнительное по поводу его работы, темы доклада про референсы и так далее. So put your, yes, you know. Если можно, синхронисты, поднимите руку, если все в порядке, все отлично. Итак, ребят, возможно, у кого-то есть вопросы по поводу темы доклада и так далее. Хорошо, так, есть вопрос.
Здравствуйте. У меня такой вопрос. У каждого художника есть любимая тема, которую ему легко исследовать, которую он так или иначе уже немного знает. И всегда ему проще задавать вот эти вопросы, что, где, когда, почему. Но всегда есть какая-то тема, с которой ты знаком очень мало. Как исследовать такую тему? Вот, может быть, есть какие-нибудь подсказки?
Спасибо.
Так, окей. Переводчики, поднимите, пожалуйста, руку еще раз. Да? So, do you understand the question?
I only got the last like 2 sentences.
Окей. Можешь просто повторить вопрос еще раз? Так. Okay, so the main point.
This keeps cutting out.
The main point is every artist has like his favorite team that he likes to explore, that he likes to work on. But actually, what do if you don't like the the team that you need to work on? What to do in this position?
Oh. Okay, so this is. Is that okay? It's a little loud. This is one of the things that we all struggle with as artists. We have a comfort zone. We have things we love doing, and we don't want to do anything else. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to draw rabbit people. We all have something where we feel comfortable, right? And when we feel uncomfortable, we're like, I don't like this. I'm uncomfortable. But that's when you're actually learning, right? That's when you're actually getting new things into your brain. We're trained to find patterns. I didn't do that. We're trained to find patterns in things. Like our brains just naturally find patterns in things. And they settle into them very easily, like sleep cycles and like where to find the best food and what animals are going to kill me if I try to hunt them. It's a survival instinct, and it's something that's hard to fight. But you have to make it a point to get outside of that. I know that's not a method for getting outside of that. Just find parallel themes of research. So if you like rabbit people, maybe you take small steps and you go, well, I'm going to try looking at cat people now and see what about cat people. People like cat people. I'm going to go look at those cat dudes now. And then maybe from cat dudes you go to lizard men. And then from lizard men, it's just take small steps. You don't have to revolutionize your focus in artwork overnight. You don't have to say, oh, I've been doing fantasy my whole career. I think I really need to get out there and do some portraits. Or I've got to get on that street fair and do caricatures of people. It's not what I'm talking about. You don't have to change your focus necessarily. You just have to look for different reference than you normally would. Or if you see somebody who's doing things that you like, you love, you're like, I have no idea how they got to that conclusion, reach out to them and talk to them. Find out what their inspirations are for these things and find out what their thought process is going into it. Like, who are the artists that they were inspired by? And then you look up those artists. Who are the artists that they were inspired by? What is the reference they were inspired by? If you look at Ghost in the Shell and Appleseed, Masamune Shiro's work, half of his designs are just based on insect anatomy. The guy was obsessed with insects. And I think he had an architectural or engineering degree, which is why all of the vehicles look like they could potentially work. But he's putting insect design into virtually everything he does, you know? So I think maybe that would help. Did that help? Okay, cool.
Thank you. Окей, ребят, есть какие-то еще, возможно, вопросы? Есть вопрос. Вот там вот. Can you hear them well?
Yeah.
Какие конкретно сложности были... Здравствуйте. Какие конкретно сложности были у вас последние, возможно, при создании какого-то персонажа, либо образа? Ну вот что для вас было самым трудным, вот то, что вспомнится? И как вы это победили?
Okay. Well, this one isn't really a design issue for me right now. For the last 2 years, I have been struggling with a repetitive stress injury in both of my hands. And I can draw for maybe about an hour a week before being in crippling pain. So my struggle right now is a very physical one. As far as design challenges, I'll be honest, like one of the most challenging things about doing this job is having to find some sort of common ground with people you don't relate to at all. I'm a fucking loudmouth. I'm a bastard. I have no problems telling the people I work with exactly what I feel about their ideas, and I try to be nice about it, but sometimes without thinking, I will say something that maybe is unintentionally hurtful. So I have a tendency to alienate people from other disciplines. But trying to come to common ground with people that don't actually know what they want That's really the biggest struggle for me in doing this as a job. You're forced to just throw things out there that maybe you don't believe in, or you're looking for something with absolutely no direction because nobody wants to tell you what it is, but they want to tell you that that's not it. The thing you made, the 20 things you made, that's not it. And honestly, like, my decision for all of that was literally just to stop working for other people. That's how I've overcome it right now. And because of the hands, I'm not really focused on art so much as IP development and world building, just through text, writing, or more likely dictation to the iPad and the iPhone. But yeah, as far as in the workplace, it's really reconciling differences with other people from different disciplines can be very, very difficult. They're not as excited about new things as you are. Anything else?
Да. Ребята, еще какие-нибудь? Есть. Раз, два, три. Катя, я тебя не вижу. Отлично, да. Вот здесь руку первую подняли. Катя. Ну можно так тоже.
Здравствуйте. А что делать, если у вас есть всего там 2-3 часа на research, на поиск референсов? Плохо слышно.
Пожалуйста, еще раз вопрос.
Так, у вас есть всего там 2-3 часа на поиск референсов, то есть вам артлит или другие отделы говорят, все, у вас есть ограниченное время, как тогда договориться, как убедить, как вообще выиграть для себя время, чтобы как бы копнуть, глубже немножко?
That's a pretty difficult question, actually. There's really not an easy answer that isn't up to the individual you're working with, right? Or maybe you, at this point, you go past your lead to your art director and say, look, this is the result you guys want. This is what I need. Usually, if you have a good lead, you'll be able to say, I understand that producers need this for E3 next week and we have to get this stuff done, but unless I stay here for 24 hours, it's not going to happen. Usually, you will either get some help, and you can get other artists to help you with it, or maybe they'll set things back for you or cut things from the presentation. Nobody wants something to go out bad, right? There's always going to be a deadline, or almost always going to be a deadline. But there's nobody in the development room with you. There's no other game developer in that room that wants to see the product they're working out go out shitty. They want the best possible thing. They maybe want to share it with their friends. They want it on their resume. They don't want a 30 Metacritic score, right? Like, they don't want everybody in every blog or website to say this is a shit game. They don't want people on Twitch saying this is a shit game. So everybody wants it to be good. You just have to try your best to push back. And the truth is if you are forced to rush it, at the end of the day, if you did a bad job because of the time constraints that they forced upon you, it's not your fault, and you are free to bring that up and lord it over them constantly. This is what happens when you don't give us enough time for work. Sometimes this will lead your producers to put more time in the schedule. But again, this all does come down to your relationship with your lead, your relationship with your project managers and your producers, and your relationship with your art director. But at the end of the day, if it comes out bad, they're not going to want to put it out, and it's not going to be your fault. I hope.
Хорошо, там были еще руки, по-моему, здесь. Отлично.
Hello, Trevor. I will try to talk in English. Ближе? Ага. Hello, Trevor. Thank you for your great lecture.
I was wondering why they were. I was wondering why they were speaking Russian to me for a second.
Making them confused. I have heard earlier that it's very important to use references. and try to do it at my work, but I try searching for real photographs from real life and to get inspiration from them, but then when you need to reinform, to make design, to get a design out of those pictures, you try, and then they said oh, need to do it faster, and I struggled, yes, and okay, then they said those references with Ready Games and another artist, and you think okay, maybe I can't just do from photographs. Okay, I will just copy. And what will you recommend in this feeling of struggling? How to not copy, just push yourself more and do greater design?
I think this is a point that literally everybody in their career gets to. I think when you're young and you're starting off, you are inevitably looking at other people's artwork and you're copying. Maybe you're not copying directly, but you're doing your own sort of close, but your own version of it. When I was a kid, we didn't have the internet when I was a kid, so that sort of sucked. I didn't know that there were people much better than Rob Liefeld out there. Do you guys know who that is? The Captain America, right? I copied his drawings relentlessly when I was 13 years old. And he's fucking awful. He's a terrible artist. But the thing that is magical about Rob Liefeld is that he was 16 goddamn years old when he got his start, and he made me at 13 think, well, if this guy can do it, I can do it. He made it just approachable enough. So everybody goes through this phase where you're copying. Imitation is how we learn, right? Like no great master ever just one day woke up and decided, oh, I'm amazing now. I'm going to go sculpt something. I'm going to paint the Sistine Chapel. I just woke up. I'm amazing. It doesn't happen. They copied from people. They had apprenticeships where they were encouraged, actually forced to copy from their master. But at a certain point, a baby bird needs to just jump out of that nest and try to fly. There is a lot of safety in knowing there will always be that safety net there. You can always go back to this concept and say, well, I can just change it a little bit and it'll be fine. That's a safe feeling. That's a human feeling, right? And it's something that you have to reject. You're the only person in control of it, right? Nobody's going to force you to do it unless they unplug your internet and wipe your hard drive clean of reference. It's all up to you. And I'm not saying this to be cruel, but it is always going to be your decision. Does that help? Be strong? It's scary. It's a weird world we live in now, where something that I make at home, I can just spend 2 seconds, I can put it on a magic screen, and everybody in the world that cares to look at it can look at it and say whatever the fuck they want about it, right? It's weird. It's super weird. When I was 13 and drawing my shitty wannabe Rob Liefeld characters, the only people I could show were my parents, who hated it, or my other friends who were also like, yeah, Rob Liefeld characters. There was no divergent opinion. We were all sort of into the same thing. There was only 2 other kids in my tiny town that drew anything. And that's who I had to compare my work with. Now, everybody in the world can talk so much shit about your work if you just put it online. You just have to get to the point where you do not care. You're doing it for you. Look for the criticisms that are valid and that actually help you. And if people are just trashing you and not doing anything that's constructive, then ignore it. But you do have to jump out of the nest on your own. Okay.
Итак, еще вопросы? Есть.
Раз. Здравствуйте. Я хотел бы задать вопрос про специализацию. Раньше, какое-то время назад, была очень важна специализация в какой-то области.
Просто я переведу.
Да. Раньше была востребована специализация в какой-то области. Какое-то время назад я слышал, что художники больше популярны, в студиях, они более востребованы, те, которые многофункциональные, они могут брать больше задач и выполнять их быстрее, возможно. Сейчас, ну, я слышал, вижу какие-то вещи, когда специализация снова приходит назад, потому что иногда бывает так, что если специалист во всем, то он не специалист в конкретной области. Ну, то есть он не умеет делать ничего. Вопрос такой, по вашему, ну, опыту работы с художниками, ну, если видели, как его нанимают, какова сейчас тенденция? Что будет, ну, в будущем, важность специализации или, ну, попытаться объять все? Все.
I got it. It started. If I hold the cable up here, I think it actually works. Okay. That's a tough one. I've always been a specialist. I have over-specialized at the detriment of everything else, right? Like if you asked me to do an environment, it would be really hard for anybody out there to tell that I was actually a working professional. It's pathetic. I know lots of generalists who are absolutely amazing, who are fantastic designers, who have an individual voice and do crazy things every day, and then can sit down and do tons of mindless production work. Oh, we need 30 helmets. Cool, I'm on it. I know dudes that are like that, and they are fantastic, and there's actually quite a few of them. But the truth of the matter is that skill set is really valuable with smaller studios. I think smaller studios are probably more likely to look for just that person. A larger studio probably has it in their budget to hire a concept artist that just does characters, or that just does... I've worked with guys that literally only design guns. Only guns. If you like say, well, could you put a strap on? That's not what I do. I don't do straps. I don't do a strap for the gun. I draw the gun, right? There's guys that can do that they're just so good at that, they can whip this stuff out, they just do that. And then there's other artists that can do literally everything. I think there's room for all of it. I think the specialist does generally have a harder time finding work. Myself, for instance, I am a character guy. I can do character and props, a little bit of industrial design. But if you need an environment, I'm definitely not your man. I can critique an environment, but I can't make one. Most games are like 90% environment. Well, I guess that's not true anymore, is it, right? We got Battle Royale games with one environment. You got character-based games like League of Legends with one environment. Well, 3 environments, I guess. But for the most part, any AAA studio, the environment stuff is probably going to be the most important. If you're looking at this as, what should I specialize in if I want to get a job, you will always be needed if you can do environments well. Always. If you want to do characters and that's your thing, that's your jam, you cannot do anything else because you don't want to do anything else. It's a little bit harder. It's definitely an uphill journey, but there's work out there for everyone at this point. The levels are a little different, right? Are you at a point now, can I ask him questions back? Are you at a point now where you're trying to decide whether or not you should go with a specialization you like, or whether you should just learn everything?
Нет, это мне просто интересно.
Okay. Okay, yeah. We're all individuals, right? Or at least we should all be trying to be. If you are not excited by something, then don't do it. I don't mean like don't go to work and don't brush your teeth and don't bathe, because those are things that you have to do or society falls apart. But if it comes to your craft, the thing you are passionate about, your artwork, the thing that you've wanted to do your whole life, the thing you're most excited about, and every job you get tells you to do the opposite. I'm a character guy. I cannot wait to get in there and make the next, what's a cool guy? I can't think of a single character right now. I can't get in there. I've got to make Ari Part 2, right? I've got to do some League of Legends thing. I've got to make Gangplank Part 3. If you're passionate about that, and every job you take is just, well, could you do me a favor and draw this hut over here that the frogs live in? And you're not going to be happy, right? An art job is arguably better than going out and doing construction, but construction has an end and you can go home and forget about it. Art is one of those jobs that's hard to forget about. So if you're going to work every day and you're unhappy with the tasks that you are given, you either need to work harder on your specialization and make sure that the next job you get is that specialization, or you learn to love drawing huts that the frogs live in, because that's all you're going to do. Get more?
Возможно, еще какие-нибудь вопросы? Есть.
Hello, hi.
Oh.
So, could you tell about the biggest problems in communication of concept artists and 3D artists from your experience, and how do you resolve them? Well, I mean, the main recurrent problems of the workflow, maybe.
So this is a tough one because this does come down to your individual relationship, or in my case, my individual relationship with the character artists I've worked with. For the most part, I've been really fortunate. I've worked with some mind-blowing, amazing artists. I think the problem comes in is when the structure above us, when that relationship is bad, it's usually because we are not getting direction from the people above. It's not usually the fault of the people on the floor that are having the conflict if they have a conflict at work. If it's about work, if it's about, you kissed my wife, that's not what I'm talking about. But, well, I think this character should be this way, and it's like, well, I think you should stay closer to the concept because you're missing this. That conflict should and has to be resolved by somebody above the two of you, either a lead, a producer, heaven forbid, or your art director. Usually these conflicts come up when the leadership in your organization is not strong. It's proven most of the time if you're having problems with your coworkers and you're not going out of your way to be an asshole, it's the fault of management. If it's about your work and you are having conflict constantly, then leadership needs to step up and actually do something about it and create clear expectations for you, because then it's on them. Sorry, I don't think there's any way that you and somebody else like who are both creative people can actually resolve it, you know?
У нас есть время примерно еще на один, максимум два вопроса, поэтому если... Раз. И... Окей, есть. Все-таки есть один вопрос, хорошо. I don't know.
Hey, I have a question. How do you get a burnt out generally, and how do you fight the burnout from like drawing constantly, and especially drawing something that you are like don't want to draw sometimes, you know?
As far as if it's drawing for me, present injury withstanding, like I could draw every single day at least a little bit. You do have to take a break every once in a while. You have to get out and come to events like this where you get to meet other people and get inspired. You need to maybe start looking into different reference material or start finding new genres of things to be interested in. What I did as far as drawing a bunch of stuff I didn't like, I quit my job and moved to a different country. Again, nobody is holding you hostage in a job you're not enjoying. You could love the people you're working with but not love your work. You could love the game that you're working on but not love your work and be, I don't know, you wake up in the morning and you're like, I think I'm going to show up like 2 hours late today and just say I had an appointment, or a guy's coming to my house to I got to stay home, a plumber's coming to fix something, because you just can't bring yourself to go into the office at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. At that point, you just start looking for another job or you walk away. And I know it's not easy. And I know some places are underserved by game companies, that there aren't game companies out there for everyone, but there's always Freelance, where if you don't like something you're working on, at least it'll be over fairly quickly and you can move on to the next job. But again, you're in control of who you work for and the work you do. Whether you're working for somebody else or working for yourself, you always have the choice of saying, I need to change this. And yes, we need money. We have to pay rent. We have families. You just got to be responsible about that part, right? That's the part where you've got to suck it up and at least work until you find another job. But if you're not happy at your job, change it. It's up to you.